The views and opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Forge Fitness and Nutrition LLC, the podcast hosts, owners, employees, contractors, partners, or affiliates. This presentation may include the use of explicit language. Listener or viewer discretion is advised. Hello and welcome to the Forge Fitness, Nutrition, and Habit podcast. I'm your host, Michael S. Parker. I thank you all for joining us today, whether you're listening or watching. We have a long-term client of Forge Fitness and Nutrition Coaching since September of 2021. Today we have Evan DeLaubenfels. And I'm just happy to have him come on today, and he's going to tell his story. And before we kind of dive into that, I just want to remind everybody that at Forge, we're more interested in hearing about real life stories of individuals because all of us have our own unique journey. Not one fitness and nutrition protocol is the same for everybody. We need different habits. We need different protocols. There are ways that our bodies respond to things. And Evan has done such a great job. I was looking at his protocols for the last 6 months. That's as far as I was able to go back with their time. And I'm really impressed, Evan, with the things that you've been doing, how hard you've been working. But before we kind of dive into a series of questions, I thought I'd just give you a moment, maybe introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, kind of your little bit of a passion. And then I'm going to transition that into talking about your starting point at Forge. But tell us before that, what did you try? What was going on? What did your life look like? What were you successful with in fitness, nutrition, and habit? And then what kind of caused you to come to Forge? And then we'll take it from there.
All right. Yeah. Hi, I'm Evan. I'm a web developer. That's what pays the bills as far as what I'm passionate about. I make games, program video games, also draw, just a lot of creative stuff. And that offhand, it might not sound like something that fitness can help with, but it absolutely has. And I'm excited to talk more about that.
Let's go 6 months before you found Forge. What was fitness, nutrition, or your habits, your lifestyle? What was some of the pain points that you were experiencing, and what were some of the things that you had done that were successful? Like, just give us like a snapshot of your, I guess you could say, well-being.
Yeah, it was not good before I came to Forge. So at my heaviest, I was around 340 pounds. That was during the height of the COVID pandemic. I was not leaving my apartment. I was ordering fast food frequently. I don't know if you're familiar with Uber Eats, how they have the small order fee, but I would order enough food to not get charged the small order fee and then eat all of that, not save any of it. And you can see how I got to that point. So it was pretty bad. I did make some small changes that helped before even coming to Forge. My psychiatrist recommended, for one thing, having an apple with my lunch. That helped to fill me up, make me feel less hungry. And it was especially good because at that point, I was having chips with every meal. And so instead of having chips with my lunch, I'd have an apple. Much better option. So that helped. And also just going for a walk every day, like even that, just doing those two things, like I dropped down like 20 pounds like already.
It was subtle changes that led you to understand that it wasn't going to be necessarily hard. If you were to contribute a little bit more, did you feel like you're going to get a little bit further? Is that something that kind of worked through your head?
Yeah, I'd say throughout my fitness journey, obviously, this is including the stuff I do at Forge. Obviously, it's tough at times, but it was never unbearable, if that makes sense.
We dealt with a lot of crazy stuff during the pandemic, and I think all of the Forge clients were navigating a new terrain. I think in general, like everybody was, but when it was coming to the people that I was working with, to watch the changes in exercise adherence and people's emotional states interfering with consistency, food changes. People were starting to eat more emotionally than rationally. All of this is normal when you're in a high stress situation. Did you, and you felt like you were kind of, I don't like using this word because it's so overly used in the wrong way, but you were kind of victimized by that. And then it caused some behavior alterations that were not ideal.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sort of a hypochondriac. I worry a lot about getting sick. And so having a global pandemic happening around me was not easy, as you can imagine. So it was a very high stress environment for me, as it was for a lot of people. And that definitely contributed to me ordering fast food more often.
At the height of COVID, were you working remotely or were you in an office?
I was working remotely. Luckily, the company I was working for was very good about transitioning people to working remotely. Good for the sake of pandemic. Obviously, that means I wasn't like getting out and walking to the bus stop. So that was a disadvantage, but ultimately it was good for the sake of reducing the spread.
So before the whole thing in the pandemic happened and you started to gain all of the body fat and you started to become more sedentary, was that part of your life cycle like for 6 months prior to the pandemic, or was that post-pandemic weight gain?
I was still pretty heavy before the pandemic, I think hovering around 300. Mm-hmm. never really had good eating habits, like growing up. My parents tried to keep me active, obviously, but back then it was just kind of something they were forcing me to do, and I kind of resented it at the time. So once I got into college, I thought, "Oh, I don't have to do that anymore." So I kind of stopped, and of course, then my weight got worse, and especially my eating habits were not good at that time. So yeah, definitely before the pandemic, I still didn't have very good eating habits. I was probably still drinking soda and like just mostly getting like frozen food, not really cooking for myself much at all.
Which is funny because people are going to learn this in a few moments, but you actually are really good with your meal prep now, as far as I can tell. But before we get into that, I just wanted to mention that a lot of people went through that cycle. There's always been an unfortunate sedentary aspect to the American lifestyle since the 1970s. And it's gotten progressively worse as advent of technology. And then we sit, even myself, like I'm in front of a computer more often than I would prefer to be. One of the things that I did is I have a standing desk, so I haven't sat in years. And some people think it's a little bit funny, but for me, it just kind of works. But I even stand when I eat. So sitting is not common for me because I recognize something interesting in my biomechanics when I was sitting in extended periods. So Forge started in 2017, January 2017. And as it started to grow, I was the only coach at the time, right? It's just my company. And I was on a stability ball and I thought, oh, look at me. I'm so fit. I'm going to be activating my core and I'm going to be doing these coaching calls on the stability ball. Then I started getting sciatic pain, all these other issues where my mobility started to go down, reaching down to touch my toes became more of a challenge than I thought it was even reasonable at the time. Since Forge is now 9 years, so I'd have been 38 when I started the company. And it was a wake-up call even for me. And I have a 25-year history as of October of this year, 2026. October 2nd will be my 25th year as a fitness professional. I knew better. But did I? Because I found myself like, oh man, my hip, what's going on? Like all kinds of things started popping up. And I just made the decision to go full standing about 7 years ago. And I haven't sat and I don't have a chair in this office at all. And I found that was really helpful for me. And a lot of people started transitioning into that kind of a lifestyle, especially during more remote work. And then when the pandemic really started taking off and almost everybody was relegated to remote work. So I understand how that can happen. I saw two huge things happen nutritionally, that the food selection for most people became worse. And it was the Uber Eats and the DoorDash and the fast foods and all of that stuff. And then the second was alcohol. Just absolutely went off the charts from my perspective with even my clients. And all my clients have been with me for so long. They're very honest. And they're like, Michael, I'm struggling. Why am I drinking a bottle of wine a day? I understood. Like it hit hard and it hit fast. So I have a tremendous amount of empathy for that situation. But let's fast forward a little bit. Something happened for you, obviously, somewhere near September of 2021. And you were making assessment in your life, something, obviously. Tell me a little bit about what was going through your head.
Yeah. So it was sort of, I was being told by my therapist, and my therapist was at the time was sort of telling me, hey, you can get in shape, whenever you want to happen. So I was kind of feeling, I want to say pressure. I'm better now, but at the time I really struggled with my autonomy. So when people give just like a little gentle push in the right direction, it feels like they're holding a gun to my head and they're like forcing me. And similarly, I have a friend who probably is listening to this, probably is going to listen to this when it comes out. So if he is, I just thank you for this. He gave me, again, a very gentle push in the direction of like, getting in shape. And so if I'm being honest, I went into Forge like kind of dragging my heels like a child being forced to go to an art museum. But luckily that didn't last very long. I've been working with Coach Tate, and he started out just pretty easy. And he just said, okay, you've been going for walks. Let's do that every day. And at some point I mentioned the idea of doing resistance training, and I was sort of opposed to it at the time. I don't know, it felt egotistical to want to do that, but he mentioned that, well, actually, if you do resistance training, you burn more energy, like rebuilding the muscle tissue and the micro tears. And so that actually helps you lose fat as well. So I started doing that as well. And for a long time, I was only making exercise changes because I was afraid, this is sort of going to be a running theme with me. I was afraid that if I started eating healthy, I wouldn't be able to enjoy food. for a while, I said, I only want to do exercise. I don't want to talk about food. I shut it down whenever it came up. And I'll never forget the first thing he told me. This has really stuck with me. He said, "What if I told you that you could eat a steak with butter and that could still be healthy?" And he had my attention at that point, because I grew up thinking that the only food that was truly healthy was like a salad with no dressing and nothing else. And whenever I tried to eat a vegetable like raw, I would like gag. And so we started making dietary changes. The first thing he had me do was I started ordering factor meals. And that was my first sort of introduction to eating healthy. And it was good. It was definitely good food. Like, even at the time, I'm pretty sure I still hated vegetables, but they were like seasoned well, and they had a good sauce on them. So like, they were still good.
I've always found that fascinating. And you're another great example of how I think social media, maybe legacy upbringing, kind of how our parents raise us, or what you heard growing up about what proper nutrition is, isn't really what proper nutrition is. There's nothing wrong with a nice, clean butter. Nothing. I mean, the serving size will matter if you're worried about your calories or your total volume of saturated fat. But I've always found it fascinating that everybody is so dedicated to making this hurt. Do you know what I mean? Let me be more clear. Like, since we're on the topic of nutrition, let's use nutrition. Everybody feels like, because what they've been told or what they perceive they understand, is that nutrition is supposed to mean that you're hungry, that you don't get to enjoy it. There's no flavor. It's all vegetables. You can't eat this. You can't. It's all can'ts. Don't. And what's interesting about it is, if you look at the actual science and if you pare it back and then you apply the rational science, meaning that you don't want to have, there's a law of thermodynamics, right? You don't want to eat more calories a day than you're expending, and you need to eat enough nutritional value in order to sustain the activity level. And it's funny too, because a lot of people, they have a tendency to think the first thing they need to focus on is their diet. Sometimes that is true. Sometimes I could give, if you're a diabetic, or if you have Hashimoto's disease, or you have celiac, Crohn's, you can name a condition which would prioritize your dietary intake. However, you don't really know what your dietary intake is until you understand your output. And so if you don't know how many calories a day you need based on what you're trying to accomplish, whether it be resistance training or cardiovascular, so if you're in glycolytic or oxidative stress, you don't even know how you're supposed to be feeding yourself. How are you fueling yourself? We have a tendency to do things a little ass backwards, and for you to come to the conclusion where you said, all right, I think I'm going to have to acquiesce a little bit on the nutrition, was smart. And which is interesting, because that's something that I see you posting the most about, which is nutrition. So, but I want to kind of discover this a little bit more, because I think this is really going to be helpful for people to understand that if you are at a point where you are wanting to accomplish something physically, it could be mobility, it could be higher levels of flexibility, it could be strength endurance, it could be you want connective tissue strength, it could be hypertrophy, which means muscle development growth, it could be power production, it could be agility, it could be something is advanced as something like a plyometric application, or it could be power, whatever it is, whatever your adaptation physically is, has to be supported by your nutrition. And whatever your physical goal is your goal. That's your goal. But we need to make sure that you're fueled for the goal. And the problem is that there's a lot of noise, right? Especially, I don't know how familiar you are or how much involved in social media you are. I have a tendency to find it very adversarial. I'm not a big fan of social media. And this is a common theme. Everybody who's listening or watching right now is like, oh, he's going to talk about this again. Yeah, I don't think social media is constructive in general for the average person. I think that it is more of a detractor than it is something that edifies and lifts people up. And moreover is that there's a monetization of social media, and fitness and nutrition specifically are highly gimmickable. And Meta, yeah, that's you, Mark Zuckerberg, fuck you. They love to charge fitness people more. So it costs me more to do an advertisement than it would for somebody who's selling candles. You see what I mean?
Man.
And the reason is because it's such a competitive market, and there's so many people out there hurting. So I'm going to break this down into two things, because I want to bring it back to what you were saying, because I want to give you some praise here, because you made a very, very good decision. There's a big problem. The problem is in the way that things are marketed, it erodes reasonable expectation for results in fitness and nutrition, both. And they're very, very, gosh, what's a better word than toxic, since that's being used all the time? They're inaccurate. How about that? And that inaccuracy causes a lack of results. And then the lack of results turns into fitness failure. And then that becomes a toxic version or view of fitness and nutrition and diet and exercise, right? Because really what ends up happening is what the perceived demon is diet and exercise, and the victim is you. not the
Yeah.
influencer, not the meal prep companies, not the big multinational corporations who push the crap. Like, I don't know, the weights that shake and the bands that like vibrate or the things that shock you. All that stuff is nonsense. But the thing is, they're preying on the desperate. They're preying on people who are sick and tired of being sick and tired. People like you who are like, what am I doing ordering a full thing of DoorDash that's supposed to last me as a meal prep for 3 days and I ate it tonight, right? It preys on that vulnerability. And I find that reprehensible. People all the time, we get criticized. Well, why don't you show before and after pictures? And it's very simple. It's not your body. That's not you. Why am I, why should that be something that is going to quote unquote motivate? And motivation, by the way, is a feeling. It's just as flighty as happiness and anger. So like, why do you stake your claim on that? It should be a discipline that's cultivated, but that's hard for people to do because of all the noise and misinformation. You don't know what you don't know. And so you're hoping that you find somebody who does. And if you turn to social media or you turn to mainstream media, they're always pushing a product to sell. It's all sales. And I wanted to, with Forge, I wanted to do something different, man. I wanted to be able to relate to people who were struggling and give them solutions that were based on their unique needs. And Tate did exactly what he's supposed to do. You gave him some parameters. It's called the 5%. Every few coaching calls, there's a 5% push. Hey, Evan, what about maybe this? And this is what coaching is. It's a simple process of listening to the person, helping with where they're at now, helping them develop a roadmap, and then creating waypoints. And those waypoints aren't from A to B, or excuse me, A to Z, I should say. It's A, B, C, D. And everybody has a different length of duration between each of those. And you have done a really good job, I think, of recognizing where you are able to move your own goalpost, and then you've seen success by doing that, but you're doing it on your own time and within a way that works for you. Is that a proper assessment?
Yeah, that's very accurate. All my progress has been a long series of baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
There was a term I really like. You know, you have your comfort zone, and then a little bit outside that, you have your growth zone.
Mm-hmm.
But then outside of that, I forget what outside of that is called, but basically out of the growth zone is like, it's untenable. It might
It's like
actually,
a no-go.
Yeah, might do more harm than good.
Yeah, fair enough. And that's totally right. Because you have to meet people where they're at. And that's what I think any reasonable fitness professional or wellness professional will do is they'll take a look at where that person is, and then they try to strategically create a progression system that is within the relative comfort of that person, but it pushes you 5% out. In fact, it's so funny. I just got off the call with a client who's been with me for 6 years. His wife has been with me for 5. I train a lot of couples, by the way. And, he and I were just talking about this. I use the 5% rule on him. I push him just a little bit, 5%, 5%, 5%. And he's finally getting to a place now where he's seeing results based on his terms. And that's the thing too, because social media tells you 30 days or less and you're going to lose 1 billion pounds or whatever nonsense they throw out there, right? I'm being hyperbolous, but you understand what I'm saying, right? The concept. But I think that what everybody, or I'm hoping who's listening to this, is that your journey is your journey, and that you have to take it in the steps that you're capable. And then as you become more and more capable, those steps, hopefully the stride gets longer, and then the results come faster. But you can't push people nowadays. We've learned that here at Forge. I'm very, very careful with, it's not so much that everybody's delicate, but everybody is unique, and everybody needs a different kind of handling. If you're a zookeeper, this is a terrible analogy, I'm just coming up at the top of my head, but roll with me on this one, Evan. If you're a zookeeper, you don't treat a lion the same way you do, I don't know, a meerkat that is loving and super wants to be on your shoulder while you're cleaning the pen. You see what I mean? Like everybody's a little bit different. You have to, as a coach, you have to have the conscientiousness. You have to be aware of their unique predisposition. And then you have to help guide them so that they see sustainable, long lasting results that are unique to them. And I don't think that it's fair the way that social media and mainstream marketing has pigeonholed people into this. And then it becomes adversarial. You had said that earlier. You become resistant. And that, by the way, in coaching, we call that coaching resistance, but it's not just in coaching, it's in general. I am known very well for, I don't like being told what to do. It's probably why I own my own company. I just don't. And it's not so much that I'm obstinate or think that I know better. It's just that I have a different vision for what I want to accomplish, and it's my life. And so can I not do that?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And you seem like the kind of guy I know you're smart. Tate's already told me you're a sharp man. So it seems to me like you're probably one of those guys who's like, for lack of better terms, you see through bullshit real fast.
It depends. Sometimes I would say I'm very book smart. Like I can program. I'm really good at math. Everything else, like social smart. Yeah. Social smarts, not so much.
but that's what makes you so special in you. And that's what we like to embrace. And that's why we want to hear your story. I just can't get over the fact that you were over 300 pounds.
Yeah,
You know,
me
especially
neither.
considering now where you're at. That's incredible, man.
Pretty much almost exactly half the weight I started at.
I think the last recorded weight that I saw in your profile was 171.
Yeah.
Is that close?
Yeah, that sounds right.
I mean, that's a huge life change. That changes everything from the way that your knees interact with your body to the way that your brain chemistry is working, your heart functions, your pulmonary system, your endocrine system. All of those things benefit from the reduction of the body fat. So congratulations, sir. Great job.
Thank you.
Quick transition into just a little bit more of your story. So we started talking about your starting point. To whatever degree you're comfortable, everybody's got a different way that they like to express themselves, but there's a lot. There's a physical aspect, there's a mental aspect, and there's an emotional aspect to when you fail at I can give you a whole bunch of examples, but because I don't want to just make it all about weight, right? Because that's not really that important. Body fat percentage is more important than weight, but there's more to our physical bodies than just the amount of fat that we're carrying. I think that for a lot of the folks that I work with now, because they've been with me for so long, my clients have been with me so many years. In fact, a client right before one of the clients I just got off the phone with a couple hours ago, has been with me since December of 2017. So it's a long time, and I've gotten to know him really well. And his goal wasn't fat loss. His goal was transitioning out of being a high-level endurance athlete into having better mobility and being able to keep up with his grandkids that were coming. And that's right up our alley. That's music to my ears. Look, we're all for the aesthetic. Like, man, if you want to look great, you want to carry around extra lean muscle, or you have an aesthetic desire, fine. That's fine. That's yours. It's not, we can train people for that, but I'm more interested in, like, what do you want? Not what social media is telling you. Look, all of us coaches at Forge, we want our clients to be fit and healthy, but whatever the purpose of that physicality is, whether it be athletics, whether it be keeping up with your kids, or whether it be that you just don't hurt at night when you're aging, right? Those things all matter. And so we don't pigeonhole people into things. But I was just curious about, for you, let's just talk about the day that you got on, because did you just find us online? Did you just Google search? How did you find us?
I'm pretty sure I just Google searched. I specifically wanted a remote physical trainer. That was important to me. I'm pretty sure the pandemic was probably still going on to some extent, and
2021.
I do struggle. I struggle less now, but I struggle with social anxiety. I didn't really want to go out places. So I specifically wanted to find a remote personal trainer, and I'm pretty sure I just Googled remote personal trainer and found you guys that way.
Perfect. It's interesting. SEO, you're an engineer, so you'll appreciate this. SEO is not what it used to be. From 2021 till now, we've had to completely change our entire operating model as it relates to SEO, AI-based SEO, all of the. So that's called AIO now, I think is what it's called. Am I correct on that? Heather?
Not sure the exact term, but yeah, you do have to think about AI now. That's the first thing Google is pushing.
Big time. It's very evident. And so we got ahead of that. We're a little bit ahead of that in comparison to some of our other competitors. I've always been less of a social media ads guy. We have to do it, right? We have to do it. But for me, it's always been trying to be as organic as possible. And the landscape has changed, and it's harder now than it's ever been, man. I'll tell you what, okay, just a fun statistic. This is interesting since we're talking about the COVID phenomenon. When I started Forge in 2017, the International Racket Sports Health Club Association, which has now since changed their name to the Health Club Association because racket sports have died, they basically did an expose on online fitness phenomenon. It was wearable technologies and online training and niche boutique fitness centers. And this was a collaboration with the American College of Sports Medicine. They do this every few years where they look at what the trends are going to be, and then they make an assessment of where it's at and then where they think it's going to go. But back in 2017, Forge was one of a couple hundred online fitness nutrition coaching companies, just a couple hundred. As of 2024, I don't have the data for 25, but as of 2024, there are about 380,000 competitors. So we went from a couple hundred to hundreds, not tens, hundreds of thousands of competitors. We have to compete with 20-year-old kids on TikTok who have the online stores where it's all anecdotal and emotion based, and it's all impulsive and it's really cheap. It's not real coaching, right? But it still thins the market because the market really hasn't increased. I don't know if you know this, but the fitness and nutrition help market is about the same that it's been for 20 years, about 50 million people actively kind of in a cycle trying to become well. This is evident in the obesity statistics. So if you were to just cross compare, the obesity epidemic in the United States is horrific. Now, I have a prediction. I'm going to say it right now. I bet I'm going to be right. Oh, gosh, I hope I am, because otherwise I'm going to look stupid. But I will bet you that if the statistics, not in 2026, let's look at the 2027 statistics, you will see a decline in obesity in the United States. I bet you. However, you're going to see an increase in pancreatitis, kidney disease, liver problems, and catabolic medical conditions where people are muscle wasted. Why do you think I think that's true?
If I had to guess, I would say because of the increase in GLP-1 medications, Ozempic, and all those stuff helping people lose weight.
You nailed it. There are consequences to shortcuts in this kind of a world, and now look, I want to be crystal clear about this before, again, because everybody likes to clutch their pearls now. But I just want to make sure that everybody understands that a semaglutide is designed specifically for people who have pre-existing medical conditions, and they're warranted. If you're a diabetic and your insulin, your pancreas isn't working correctly, your insulin distribution is all completely messed up, there are reasons to be on these kinds of medications. I completely 100% support that. Or if you are so beyond, if you're like 300, 400, 500 pounds and you need a bit of a boost, but you're working hard to basically buffer it up on the back end by maintaining lean muscle tissue and bone integrity, great. All that's fine. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that a semaglutide is universally incorrect. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's being misused and abused. And we're going to see a falsification in the obesity rate, but I wanted everyone to remember to check the other indicators. Also, it will be a very interesting U-shaped loop. It'll dip and it'll go up. This is just me, 25 years of experience watching human behavior, knowing how people are. I went through the ephedra phase. I went through even the Kardashians. What are they? They're talking about what was that? Clenbuterol, which is an illegal substance. And they're like, and they're talking about it on national television with no repercussions whatsoever, right? Clenbuterol is not something you should be taking. Plus it's illegal and I don't even know where the hell you'd get it, but there's enough people getting it, right? So the abuse of substance is an artificial indicator of physical health from a visual standpoint. So while you may look good, you may not actually be healthy.
Yeah.
And that is something that I'm concerned about. And I'm objective about this stuff. I have clients that are on a semaglutide. In fact, I had a client that I met, he's been with me for many, many, many years. I see him every other week. Our last call was last week. He's like, I got something I got to tell you and you're going to be pissed. I'm like, will I? You might be surprised. And you know what? As soon as he said that, because I know him, I said, bitch, you're on Ozempic, aren't you? You got Ozempic. And he said, I'm on a prescription for Ozempic. I'm only going to do it for 6 weeks. And I said, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. We'll work with that. That's all fine. I guess the reason I'm diatribing onto that is because it's just another shortcut that people want to gravitate towards. You are, and if somebody is on a semaglutide and they're still exercising, I'm going to be, okay, all right, fine. If they're using it exclusively for weight loss, not fat loss, by the way, because there's going to be a fat loss aspect to it, but you're going to be wasting muscle, bone, organ tissue, all that stuff goes too. That's why you get pancreatitis and kidney disease, which is going to be, you're going to see those numbers going up. They already are. You can just Google it now. It's already there. But who is it? There's, I don't really know these social media guys. He's got the silver hair. He's really famous. Oh gosh, Dr. Drew. Am I getting that right? Dr. Drew.
Not familiar
I'll
with
look
the
it
guy.
up. Like everybody who's listening or watching, I'll verify this. I believe that Dr. Drew was just talking to somebody, Dr. Drew Penske. He was talking about that there's now data coming through about how corrosive these semaglutides are because of the way they're being administered, not because of them themselves. It's how they're being used and they're being unnecessarily prescribed. Here's what's crazy. Well, most of my clients who go in for their physicals, they'll come to me. It's like, you'll never believe what my doctor just told me I have to get on. So they're pushing a pharmaceutical too. And it's like, all right, I just want people to be objective. Take a look at your own life. You make the best decision for yourself. I'm not going to be the one who's going to tell you to do it or not to do it. That's not my place. But my place is to say that I understand there's an emotional catalyst and there's a need for instant gratification. And you just took a really strong path you got your fitness under control first, then you moved to your nutrition and you've lost a significant amount of body fat to get to the point where you're at now. And my question to you is, what was the most intense response for you was it when you looked in the mirror and saw your physical body? Was it when you felt like you're out of breath walking upstairs? I mean, I could give you different scenarios, but there had to have been a catalyst that made you say, I'm going to check out a remote trainer and I'm going to stop this. What was it for you specifically?
It was mainly, if I'm being honest, like my main focus was on my weight. And that's something I still struggle with, admittedly, is just focusing too much on weight. And when I see it go up a pound, I get worried, but could also be muscle. I do have one of those devices to track body fat percentage, but that ended up being detrimental as well because I would see the percentage go up by 1 and then feel like a failure. So I ended up having to stop measuring that. Yeah, so I was mainly focused on my weight, and I saw that I saw how high it was, and I had people like my therapist, like that one friend telling me like, hey, you can make lifestyle changes and get healthier. And emotionally, like I said, I struggle with my own autonomy. A lot of the emotion then was just being upset that I'm using the heaviest quotation marks here, being forced to do this. And that because at the time, like you said, I had it in my head that fitness has to hurt.
Mhm.
I had that in my head, and I just, I was avoiding that for so long, but I was like, okay, now I have to hurt. I have to hurt myself in order to like be at a healthy weight. And on that note, now that I have actually made this fitness journey, I do think it's such a shame that people tend to think that the only reason to get in shape is for weight loss, and weight loss, not even fat loss. Because when I just feel better. Like I just, overall mood, energy. Like I mentioned how a lot of the things I do aren't really physical. I program, I draw. You would think I wouldn't have a need for physical fitness, but like no, when I started working out regularly, I got more mental energy as well. I got more energy to draw, more energy to do game development.
I think that is a very powerful statement, that it transcends the physical body. And when I talk about the biomechanical body, it moves into the cerebral. There is nothing better than having that sharp clarity after a really good workout, and then you're fueled, like you have a really good, um, a strong meal, like a good ratioed meal, good protein. You got the right carbohydrates, good complex carbs, and you kind of walk out and you're just like, okay, I'm thinking sharp right now. I'm feeling ready. I'm feeling ready to do this mental battle. I would say that I agree with you. While I work with fitness, I'm not working with fitness. I'm not back here working on this all day long. I'm standing right here with electronics, similar to you, just a little different. And I find that for me, this is just personal, that I have to work out in the morning. I have to, because if I work out in the morning, it's done. I don't have to think about it for the rest of the day. I have met my obligation to myself to be the good steward of my physical self. I've done it. So for you to say that it's translated into your profession, even though you're mostly sedentary in it, because your cognitive function increases, that right there is worth its weight in gold, don't you think?
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned earlier about starting your workout in the morning. I very recently started doing that as well. I tried it once and it put me really close to when I'm supposed to log in for work. And I kind of thought that maybe this isn't going to work out. But then I was just feeling good throughout the day. I had those endorphins from the workout, and I was hungrier, which like, it's a bit weird to say that's a good thing, but I like food. So if I'm hungry, that means I get to eat more. And I thought, so traditionally I would make a smoothie after my workout, make a nice like a protein smoothie. And when I started working out in the morning, I thought, well, maybe I can just wait for lunch now that I'm like working out between breakfast and lunch. And then I got like super hungry at around like 10:30. So after that, I kind of said, okay, I still need the smoothie. I still need to get that in there.
That's intuitive.
Yeah.
And because you're active, you have the right to do that. It's when you're sedentary and you're eating trash to fulfill an emotional need, not a physical need, that we run into problems. You had mentioned that nutrition was something that you kind of avoided in the beginning, and you really wanted to work on fitness, but you had said something interesting, that you were resistant to resistance training. But let me ask you a little bit of a different question, and maybe you can either clarify in one of those two things, or maybe there's something new that will spark in your brain. What was the hardest thing once, like, let's say the first week where you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so difficult. And then or how did you get past it?
I would say when I started resistance training was probably the hardest thing, because I sort of, when I brought it up, I was kind of like, oh, okay, maybe I'll do some, some push-ups or some sit-ups kind of. Coach Tate kind of gives me this really long list of exercises to do. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a lot. And just doing all that was probably the hardest part, just kind of working through that amount of exercises. But
The volume.
yeah, the volume.
Yeah. That's a normal feeling. That's absolutely normal. What's interesting, I actually have it up here. I won't share my screen because this is private for you. But I just want everybody to know I just went back to just to November. because I thought, 5, 6 months, you have almost missed no workouts. You only had that one thing during Thanksgiving where you actually were off on purpose, yet you were still tracking to some degree. You at least were logging in. There was a 0 calorie like log, but that's not important. I saw you were doing cycling, but here's the thing. If I start from November 1st and we take those like 4 or 5 days off from Thanksgiving, you don't miss. I admire this because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is to be this consistent. And this is coming from a guy who didn't even want to do it.
Yep. I saw the benefits. I fell in love with the benefits. And admittedly, part of it, I do tend to be too hard on myself sometimes. There are some situations where you do kind of want to ease up a little bit. Maybe not like skip your workout entirely, but just do less than you normally would. And I have trouble recognizing that. I had sort of a more of a strict upbringing than maybe most people did. So I tend to think that I have to do all the things that I'm supposed to, or else I'm a failure. And that's part of the reason I didn't want to start fitness in the first place, because, that was another thing I could potentially fail at, quote unquote. So it's a double-edged sword. Like, am I very consistent with my exercise? Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely a good thing. But then there's situations where I really should be taking it easy and I'm still just going in, firing at all cylinders. If like I'm sick or like I, didn't sleep well last night and I really should be taking it a little easier.
I understand. I just would remind you, remember I had said earlier today that I had planned on doing a fast and my body told me something different and I had to be agile. But I made the right choice by feeding my body. It needed the fuel. I had pushed it. And while I didn't adhere exactly to what I had structured, what I had done was I use the word agility because it's objective. I'm dodging an arrow, right? I'm not going to just stand there and say, well, I accepted that I would take the arrow and then I get hit with it. I said, I don't really want to.
Yeah.
And I let it go by. But here's the thing. For those of you listening, I'm moving my body off to the side. I'm letting the arrow pass, but I don't move my feet and I just turn my body and I'm back on track again instantly. And I encourage you to maybe think about that next time you have those feelings, to remind yourself that I'm not stepping off the path. I'm literally moving out of the way of something that could cause damage. And I'm literally just going back on track with almost no hitch in your step. It's a very difficult concept for people to understand because we live in the all or nothing principle.
That was sort of a healing moment for me when I remembered this now, just thinking about this. The first time I got some kind of injury, I'm not sure what exactly it was, but I could not complete my workout. Like if I did just a little bit of this, like my arm would hurt. And I think I literally like started crying in frustration because I couldn't do what I was supposed to. And, I expected this is nothing against Coach Tate. It's more so just my expectations about people and how sort of, and just the world. But I sort of expected him to be upset or be disappointed. You didn't finish your workout, you slacker. No, he was just like, he just took it in stride. Like, okay, take some time to recover. And like I did, and I got back on it.
But this is the thing, Evan, is that I'm listening to you and I'm just going to tell you straight out. This is like listening to a guy whose personality has changed in some ways. The way that you even think has changed. I'm a big fantasy fan. Sorry, everybody. I know I listen to 60 to 70 fantasy books per year. I'm a nerd. I know you're a gamer. I just re-listened again to The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini. And it is interesting to me because he wrote those books when he was a teenager and they became international bestsellers. And apparently Disney has been working with him to correct the egregious mistake of the Aragon movie they made in the 90s, which was actually terrible. But seriously, I'm a big fantasy fan. And so I decided, I just wanted to re-listen to The Inheritance Cycle again, in which I just finished. And now I'm on to another series of books. I think the point that I wanted to hammer on this was that we are always looking for our true name. Who are we? And as we grow and as we develop who we were in the past, and when the power of the name of who we were, and the name in the inheritance cycle of the person or the dragon or whatever it is. But in this case, let's talk about a person. Your true name, the words that define your name, they indicate in an old ancient language everything about your personality, the good and the bad. It's an expose on you. And once you discover your true name, you can see where you have limitations, and your true name can change over time. It's not set in stone. You don't have to be the way that you were, or you don't have to limit yourself because they're self-imposed, right? For most of an American, not all over the world, there are huge disparities all over the world. But in the United States, we're very fortunate for the first time in history. Most people have a unique position to where they can change. And then that means that all of the things that make up who they are and their true name changes as well. And when I'm listening to you, it just re-sparks this idea. Like in the book series, Aragon has a true name. He doesn't want the king to know what his true name is, because if somebody knows your true name, they have complete and total power over you. Well, what's interesting is in the book series, if you ever listened to or read, it's beautiful, by the way, for those of you who don't know it, you should. Aragon's half-brother Murtagh was unfortunately captured by Galbatorix and the king. Galbatorix knew his true name, and he manipulated Murtagh into doing awful things. But Murtagh was able to grow, and he changed so much. So at the end of the book, in the last book called The Inheritance, at the last moment when everything could go totally wrong, Murtagh changed so much that the king no longer could use his real name because it changed. And that I encourage everybody to think about. I know some may say that's a sophomoric view, but I think it's fun and cute and easy to use as an analogy. And that's what I'm hearing from you is like your true name keeps changing. You keep growing. And with that growth, you are the one who retains your power. Less people have power over you. I just wanted to give you that compliment.
Thank you. I think that's definitely true. I have grown and changed a lot, and I'm very proud of that.
I'm just happy to be along for the ride and share this time with you. So coming back to kind of on track with what we're saying, I want to be respectful of your time. You had a whole series of mindsets and habits at one point that were not necessarily ideal. Those have fundamentally changed over time. And then we were talking about, your name changing. You're no longer the same person that you were when you started in a lot of respects, but you're able to hold on to your core character, and the things that make you Evan. And I think that that's awesome. You had mentioned some impact, how things have transformed in your life outside of fitness, like in work, in your job. Has this translated at all into your enthusiasm for activity, relationships? Is there anything else that has just kind of been enhanced by you getting more well?
Yeah, I would say that I'm more confident at work now. I'm more willing to take on challenges because I have more energy. I'm an introvert by nature, so socializing takes energy. And since I have more mental energy now, I have more capacity for socializing. My work started sort of transitioning back into being in the office part of the week. And I wasn't happy about that, but I managed to make it work. And I've even managed to, keep up with my fitness. If you see, like, we have the lighter workout on Monday and Tuesday, that's because I'm in office and I don't really have time to work out in the morning, and I'm usually exhausted when I get back.
I see it now, short upper. I see it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. The translation into other aspects of our lives sometimes are subtle and we don't recognize them right away. I like to ask the question because it inspires a retrospection. You have to think about it. I have a little slightly different role with my coaching. I work with a lot of high-end executives, lawyers, physicians, military officers that are at like the Pentagon. I have more NDAs signed than I care to explain because I can't. I work with a lot of very high functioning people, and these are the kinds of questions that I have to ask them all the time. How is this translating into your performance? And these are people who sometimes are introverted. Like some of the lawyers that I work with are highly introverted. Ironically, I did not expect that when I started this company 10 years ago, that lawyers come in so many different facets. They're not all James Spader and Boston Legal. They're not all Perry Mason. Some of them are actually really behind the scenes, introverted, highly intelligent people who are doing things within even our government. Like I said, the Pentagon, where I'm just like, okay, that's all. This is way beyond my cerebral capacity, but thank God you're there. They're very, very smart men and women that I work with. I'm very, very, very fortunate. But I like to ask these questions because it inspires thought. You have to consider, it's conscientious reaction. You have to say, okay, where am I at now? Where do I want to go? And I have to be a participant in this. Now, when it comes to inspiration, that is so uniquely personal. Some people are inspired by some things, some people aren't. Whenever I need to refresh my life, I find nature is a recourse for me. It's hard in Texas, I'll admit, because it's flat as fuck everywhere you look. There's not a mountain to be seen. But for me, it used to be, before we moved to Texas, we lived in South Lake Tahoe, Nevada, right near the California border. And that is some of the most beautiful country that you'll ever imagine. And I was 3.5 hours from Yosemite National Park. And whenever I felt like I need to get refresh and connect with myself and really understand where I'm at and what I need to do, and I guess purging my mind of all the toxicity of how just life is in general, it just is the way it is. There is nothing more cleansing to me than sitting in Yosemite Valley with my wife, Heather, because we're both big backcountry hikers. We used to be, not in Texas anymore, but sitting with her and having a few quiet moments and just the grandeur, the scope, the heaviness of the rock. If you've ever been to Yosemite National Park and you've been in the valley, there's something there that just makes you realize that the world is so vast. And just the tonnage of the mountains that are around you is so unfathomable. And the fact that they exist and that I'm fortunate to sit here with the conscientiousness that I have and look around and absorb it and revel in the beauty of the world that I'm part of reinvigorates me to the point where I'm like, how can I do even better for myself, for my family, and then an extension through Forge. Forge to me is a conduit of love. I know it sounds, some people don't understand this. I don't run a business the same way that most people do. But for me, it's really about how can I improve the lives of others? And in order for me to do that, I must be well. I have to make sure that I'm on track. And a lot of people are in despair. And this has always been, and it always will be, that it's easy. You get stuck in the news, you get stuck on social media. We have now echo chambers through algorithms. So what you're kind of drawn to, and it's usually negative, is what shows up on your feed, and that's all you're fed. And it's just constant negativity, how the world is bad, and this politician or this person is bad or whatever. And it's some of it's true. But the point that I'm making is, we at some point have to disassociate ourselves. And we're not good at doing this right now in social media's America. We're not good at it. We have to disassociate for a moment, and we have to really look at ourselves and say, who am I? What do I want to accomplish? And how can I move that back into the mainstream and help other people around me? For me, it's my family and it's my company. It's everybody who's associated with Forge. Other than that, what am I supposed to do? All right. How am I supposed to stop XYZ happening in America or around the world? There are certain things that can be done, but I can't lose sleep over that. I got enough fucking problems myself, but the problem is that we're force fed so much of this nonsense, and it can be overwhelming to the point where you almost want to give up. Have you ever sensed that? Do you ever get a fatalistic view, something like nihilistic now with everything that's going on, especially with the way social media shares things?
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say earlier in regards to social media, I closed my Facebook account and I'm much better for it. But yeah, with news and stuff, like all the stuff going on in the world, yeah, I definitely have those moments where I just seems hopeless.
I think this is my opinion. I'll share this. I do believe that being aware of what's happening in your local community is far more vital and is more potency than worrying about international or national stages. I care about what's happening in my county. I do very much. I care about what's happening in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. For me, that's home. I have to be very aware of that. But for the rest of it, I have to triage, dude. I have to triage my emotional bandwidth. You had said that earlier. By the way, you didn't use the word bandwidth, but I was about to inject that. But then you were on such a great path, I didn't want to say anything. And this is what inspired what I'm saying now. We only have so much bandwidth. If you get your internet installed and they say, hey, you have 250 megabytes up, you're like, cool, can you make it 1,000? They're like, no, bitch, you only get 250. That's all there is. Humans are the same. We've only got so much. And it's not wrong. It's not incorrect to siphon your bandwidth to the preservation of your family. And you can't help anybody if you aren't well, right? Now, you can leave some bandwidth for other things, but I just choose to do things that I feel are more impactful. Me raging on social media will never work. In fact, if you go to my social media, you'll be like, dude, this guy never posts anything. In fact, Evan, I'll tell you this, if I didn't have a company that was serving 60 countries with thousands of clients, I wouldn't even have social media. But unfortunately, because we live in a world where I need social proof to validate that I'm even a real person. So if I didn't have social media, we wouldn't get clients because they say, oh, this guy doesn't have an Instagram. I'm not going to follow him.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway, as a quick segue in, I feel like, you're the kind of guy who's a pay it forward kind of guy, I can tell. And I think most people who come onto this podcast knowing what it is, especially if they're a client, they know that this is about your story and where you're at and then just having a great conversation. You have a unique experience like everybody, which somebody would say if they're a philosopher, then that makes it not unique. But it is. It is unique because you are a unique person. Evan is Evan. Tell me a little bit about this. I'm going to give you a chance to do some coaching. If somebody who's listening is stuck or they're unsure, insecure, whatever, there's a roadblock for them. They could be a client. They could be somebody who's listening. They could be a fitness professional because we have all kinds of listeners and viewers. But in general, for life, for you, when you think about people who are suffering when it comes to fitness, nutrition, and habit change and all the roadblocks that are in their way that they either put there or that are there, what advice would you share with them based on your incredible experience?
I was thinking about this a lot. This was one of the main reasons I wanted to come on this podcast, was to inspire people, if I can inspire people to get fit, or not even, I shouldn't say get fit because that feels like there's an end goal. Get fitter, improve their health, even if they're not at the end goal, whatever that may be. A lot of people talk about the downsides of being overweight. You hear that, I would say, the most. And some people will talk about the benefits of being in shape. But despite all of that, what really kept me from seeking out fitness was there were certain things that I didn't want to give up, things I enjoy, mostly food related. I like food, as you can tell from my posts on the forum. And I want to sort of reassure people that you really don't have to give up as much as you think. I don't know if you're familiar with Gabriel Iglesias, the comedian, I'm not fat, I'm fluffy.
Fluffy guy.
Yeah. I remember one point he said, someone asked him, like, don't you want to live to be 100? And he said, not if I can't eat tacos. And for a while, I thought that was a very salient point. Like, yeah, I don't want to live to be 100 if I can't eat tacos. But here's the thing. I make tacos. Like, I still do. I make them myself. I like the Forge app has dozens of healthy taco recipes. You can, pick one from there and they're delicious. So you don't have to give that up. And, some people think that you have to give up carbs. Like, you can't ever have carbs. And like, that's super not true. Carbs are, you have to portion them properly. If you're only eating carbs, they're not going to fill you up. And that's why they're tricky. That's why I don't really want to say dangerous, but that's how they can be overused and lead to obesity. So you still have carbs. Like, I mentioned how my therapist had me, have an apple with my lunch. And that's still a tradition for me. After lunch, sometime in the afternoon, I'll have like an apple and peanut butter as a snack. And it's delicious. Another thing was, I mentioned before how I used to think vegetables were disgusting. I remember, getting when I ordered some from a Chinese place, I got some broccoli and I was struggling to eat like one piece of broccoli that was covered in sauce. And you gotta season them properly. And then they're delicious too. When I'm done with this call, I'm going to go make a chicken stir fry. And at that point, the vegetables are pretty much just a delivery system for the seasonings. And obviously they have nutrition and stuff too, but just from a taste standpoint, like, you're just tasting the seasonings at that point. And, you can learn to like them. And you can make them good. Another thing I want to let people know is one of the things that kept me from pursuing fitness is I thought I would have to completely give up some foods. Like, I can't ever have cake. I can't ever have ice cream. I got to this point still getting ice cream and pizza on the weekends as a treat every week. And the reason I was able to do that was because the rest of the week, it's all like solid meals, like solid healthy meals. Like that once a week treat, it's really not gonna, you can still have that. And I also have I have a massive sweet tooth, and even during the week, I have a lot of sweet cravings, and the way I get by that is like fruit smoothies. Smoothies are amazing, and because I don't like eat processed sugars very often, they taste even better. So like, even if you have a sweet tooth, you can still enjoy that. It's like, smoothies feel like cheating. It's crazy how, like, you just the only thing sweetening it is a banana, and it's like you don't even taste there's vegetables in there. It just tastes like a sweet drink. It's crazy. All the meals on the Forge app are delicious. That's why I've been posting. I saw, like, I still remember this. I inspired someone to make one of the meals for their kids, and the kids enjoyed it, and that was such a meaningful moment, because like I struggled so much with like eating healthy as a kid, and just sort of, my mom could like cook well most of the time, but like, I do remember like struggling to eat the lentil soup she made, and thinking that was what healthy eating had to be, was just choke it down, and like just having that. I was just so happy that those kids were able to see that it's not like that. They can have healthy food and enjoy it. And I mentioned before, the working out was never unbearable. Like it was the 5%, like you said, just the little pushes within your growth zone. It was never to the point where I was like wanting to die or something. It was manageable. Yeah, those are the big things I wanted to mention. Is like, I love food, and I love it even more now that I know not just how delicious it can be, but also how nourishing it can be.
And isn't it interesting how you are now over 120 pounds lighter but still able to enjoy food. That requires somebody to be willing to alter their lifestyle and also not become victim to the nonsensical hype of it has to hurt. I feel like that's kind of the theme for you, Evan, is that you always thought it was going to hurt or it's going to have to be terrible, that you had to eat crap and it was going to be tasteless and that you had to work out hard and it wasn't, I understand that. And then the amount of effort and the time and the energy and I have to buy organic and all that nonsense, it just compounds and then it becomes a detractor. It's a barrier. But you have been able to you dropped obstinance, I think, is what happened. And we're all obstinate, aren't we, to some degree? And you just said, look, I want to be really clear. You own this. Like, this is your success. You can sit here today, 4.5 years later, and say, I was that guy who would never have done this before, but here I am now, 120 plus pounds lighter, still in love with food, but managing it, exercising with intent, not just because. And you're doing exactly what I set out to do. And this makes me extraordinarily happy because it wasn't about people getting fit. It was about people staying fit. I want people to be well because it helps everybody. Everybody wins when we're a healthy society. It helps us with our productivity, helps with our family, it helps with everything. And I'm extraordinarily proud of you. And I know, like, when you look back, that there's got to be things that you're proud of, and because you've come so far. If, for example, you could play this game, like Back to the Future, right? If you could go back in time to yourself and you could intervene for you, what part of your life would that be? And what would you say to yourself?
I would probably have to intervene probably when I started college, or basically started to have some independence. And at that point, I would probably want to tell myself the whole spiel I just gave about how, like, you can be healthy and still enjoy food, which, by the way, also another benefit of cooking for myself that I didn't think of, or that I didn't realize would happen. One of the ways that, like, parents show love is by cooking for you, providing nourishment. So when you cook for yourself, you're sort of showing that love for yourself, and it kind of it gives you some, like, self-esteem just to show that love. But yeah, I would give that whole spiel because I genuinely didn't know. I thought that healthy food was just tasteless crap.
That's so common, especially like for me. I grew up in it was TV dinners, man. That's in my family. We grew up on a dairy farm. It was we were very exceedingly poor. I'm as a welfare kid, and the food that we got from the government and from the community, because we were fortunate, we lived in a very old school style community. They don't exist very often anymore, but the families within the community knew that we were the poor people, and they would always donate, and they would drop by food on the weekend. They'd come by and be like bringing us blocks of cheese and peanut butter and stuff like that. We're very fortunate. I mean, the community I grew up in was really interesting. A little backwater, but it was, it was nice. It was a dairy community up in Washington State. And I think it was nice to have other people care. And I think that I started to value nutrition in a much different way as I got older, because back then it was whatever I could eat, and whatever you could eat back then was cheap, and whatever was cheap was gross for your body. You know what I mean? It took me a long time to move away from microwavable foods and, bagel bites, or what were those? Is everything like at Costco? What were they? Those hot dogs that were wrapped up in bread. What were those called?
Corn dogs.
Corn dogs, but there was another one too, bagel dogs.
I haven't had those.
Yeah. I don't think they even make them anymore. They're probably illegal, not really food. But
Yeah.
I agree with you. And you mentioned something about cooking for yourself. Is there is a care that is associated to that. And what you may not know, I'll tell you now, and people who've been listening to me for a long time, or all my clients know this, but I hand make all of our food from scratch. I do it. And I'm a busy guy. I work, my average day is probably 10, maybe 12 hours with all the things that I'm responsible for. And I love cooking, not just for myself, because if I'm by myself, I will still cook highly nutritious food. And I do care for myself in that regard. So for me, food is an expression of love, like you had said. And I think that was beautifully stated. And I wanted to just hallmark it because can't think of anything better that I love than, at the end of the day, even though I'm exhausted, no matter what, I hand make food for Heather and myself. And we sit and we enjoy it. Well, I don't sit. I actually stand. I don't even sit at a table, but Heather will sit we have a kitchen bar, and I'll stand there and she'll sit there, and then we'll put on a show that we're watching. Like right now, it's the Knights of the Seven Kingdom on HBO. We're doing that, and we'll watch one episode, and then a lot of people don't realize this, but Heather works for Forge. As soon as we're done with that this evening, we actually go back to work. But I'm going to hand make something with love, and it's going to be delicious. There's going to be fucking cheese. There's going to be butter. There's going to be some oils. I'm heavy handed with a fleur de sel. I use a flaky. I don't care. I don't care that it's expensive. I don't care that it's $20 for 8 ounces. I don't care because it's worth the investment. Throughout history, food has been used to connect people. When somebody dies, what do you do? When somebody gets married, what do you do? When somebody has a baby, what do you do? When somebody wins something or is successful at something, when you're celebrating anything, what do human beings do across every single culture in all of the world since the beginning of recorded history?
They eat.
We make food.
Yeah.
Because we're nourishing. And Evan, I love that you said that because I want people to realize it's not about what food is bad or what food is good all the time. Sometimes you can have both. It's all about moderation and in the right circumstance. But if you are portionally aware, meaning that you're not eating too much, and the quality of the food sources is on point, and you're active enough, you will be fit and you will feel so vibrant. Like I get excited. I'm the kind of person who is unlike most fitness professionals. Most fitness professionals are like, I'm going to have to go eat my Brussels sprouts and broccoli and my white rice that has no seasoning and chicken that I boiled. Why? You're not even a figure competitor. These are like influencers also. But by the way, influencers are liars. I've been in the industry a long time and I have been at high level. It's almost like another world that the end user, like clients, quote unquote, don't know about. But I've been at a table with influencers who have over 20 million followers. And I was sitting and I was the only male. There were like 6 females. All of them had massive social media followings. Incredible. And what they were posting was not what those girls were eating. And I called them out. I said it. And of course I got in trouble, right? Because you can't say anything, I guess. But they were posting. So one gal, she has 21 million followers. And I just looked, her and I are friends. So I looked her up the other day, even after this event, because she was the one who actually kind of agreed with me. I just want to make this comment. I just want everybody to understand, because what Evan is saying is right. And what social media influencers are saying is wrong. And I want to explain why. Evan's talking about wholesome food that you're preparing for yourself with the intention of nourishing your body to facilitate your life. These people on social media are posting things that they know that if you eat, you'll be in high enough calorie deficit. If you buy their trashy generic program for $50 on Instagram, that if you're starving yourself enough, you'll lose weight and you'll say, oh my God, this was so good, but it's not. It's a trick. It's all a trick. It's a bait and switch. I'm going to tell you why. I sat at a table with some of the biggest female influencers and they just happen to be female. Okay, everybody calm down. They just happen to be female. And these women were lying to their entire audience. I watched one of the biggest fitness models on Instagram literally pound 3 margaritas. This was in Phoenix, Arizona. She was pounding 3 margaritas and she ordered a ceviche off to the side. And then she had like these little cute wafers. And then she had a chicken quesadilla. Let me ask you folks, what do you think she posted to her followers as what she was eating? Did she post her quesadilla? No, she didn't. Did she post her margaritas? One of them, but not the 3. And then she didn't post the 5 that she had in the after party after the next round of breakout sessions that we were in. And we had an after party. And then I'm just like, you are trashed. And she's like, I know. I do that when we come out here. I'm like, but that's not what your social media is saying. Your social media is saying you had ceviche and a margarita. And you have just literally downed 1,600 calories in alcohol. And I watched it the whole time. And none of that is on your social media, girl. Now, she gets away with it. I'll tell you why. Here's why. Because she is a paid influencer. Whole entire life is dedicated to burning those. I don't know. Maybe if she listens to this, she's going to make sure that I'm accurate. I saw her drink 8 margaritas. All right. So and I'm not judging. I'm not judging if she's drinking the margaritas. That's great. We're having a great time as a party. It's what she posted and what she was saying. This is how you do it when you're traveling. Lies. And I don't like it. Evan, it drives me nuts, man. But I told her this and she actually agreed with me. She's like, you know what? You're right. I probably should be. I said, you know what would be cool? I said, check this out. If I had 20 million followers at the time, I think she only had 17 million. She's got 20 million now. I said, if I had X million followers, I'd be like, hey, you guys want to see something cool about fitness and nutrition? Look what I'm drinking and eating. I'm having quesadillas. I'm having margaritas. I'm having this ceviche. I'm out with all my friends. You want to know why I can do it? Because I actually work out and because I'm actually managing my nutrition on the off days instead of like this facade. And she never really did that. She's always kind of continued her same thing because a predominance of her market is she's now into the ASMR, like where they do the clicking in the microphone and everything's like, hello, Evan, like it's so in your head and ears. And so she's into all that stuff now. So she's following the social media trends. I'm like, okay, that's your business model. Fine. Look, social media, stop fucking around and stop lying to people. Just be honest. You guys don't do Evan, they're not putting those bands around their knees and doing the side lunges to get those giant asses. That's not what they're doing. They're loading this shit up they're putting 200 pounds on there, twice their body weight, but they're not showing that. You know why they don't show it? Because that's not marketable, because women don't want to do that. But that's what these girls are doing, and they're lying. And I just want everybody to know what Evan said is absolutely true. You don't have to live in misery. You don't have to sit there and be uncomfortable all the time. But that doesn't mean that you can be ridiculous. You can have your pastas. You can have like, well, look, you just posted this the other day. Here, I'm going to tell you real quick, Evan. I know you got to go, but look, he had just posted this meal. I had it right here. You just put this mac and cheese with silken tofu. That looks really good. And look, I'm not a tofu guy. I don't typically eat soy, but that looked fantastic. But I'm going to go up. There's another one that you did. And then I want to get your feedback on this. Hold on. It was a little while ago. Let me get up there. Okay. It was this dream cottage cheese bowl you posted, which was beautiful. It was a dessert. Hold on. And everybody, like even one of my clients said, oh, I saw that. That was really good. And by the way, you looked really good in your cycling too.
Thank you.
I want everyone to know, like, this is what Evan, who's lost over 120 pounds, eating the way that he neats to. I can't find it. It was, here, I found it. The tuna cottage cheese salad. This is a while ago. This is June 2025. I looked at that and I'm like, I would super eat that. That is so good looking. The chips and everything. And you had it all, it posted it out. And just so you know, I want to affirm you here. Did you catch that?
Sorry, you cut out a bit. What was that last part?
Well, I was going to say, for you, what I love about you is like, you don't hide things. You expose it. You're like, hey, look at this amazing dish. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's the problem, is that everybody thinks that it's wrong to have some kind of a tuna salad. There's nothing wrong with it. And I love how you break those barriers away for people. And I've even had my own personal clients telling me how much they like seeing that, because it reminds them that they can do it too. You are inspiring people. And that's why I'm so happy that you came on today. And you had said some things that we're going to definitely highlight in some of the reels, and we'll send it out. But I just want to ask you one last question, because you fired me up. I got all excited about your attitude change that you've described. To me, is like, that's the clutch for you. It's like you changed the way you thought about yourself, about your fitness, about your nutrition, and you found joy. You found joy. And that is so cool, man. So let me ask you one last thing. If there's somebody who, let's just say they're not a client, or they're not exercising, or they're not lifting, or they're not eating well, maybe they're hearing this and they're just like, I don't know where to start. From a guy who was at one point there, and without, like, it's not about like, hiring forward or a coach or anything like that, but it's about a mental thing. Like what mental thing would you share with them? It's like, if you can think this, then it will open the door for success. What would that be?
I would say, like I said before, my journey was a long series of baby steps. So I would say, just try that. Make small improvements. Go for a walk every day. Try to get more vegetables in what you're eating. Like if you're already making spaghetti, one easy thing I did, I was already making spaghetti, just toss some frozen veggies in there. Then that's a healthier meal. Just keep making small improvements, and the food has to taste good, because otherwise, if you're punishing yourself, you're just not going to stick with it. So you have to make those small improvements, because if you overwork yourself, you're not going to stick with it. So just keep it small, keep it simple, and be patient, and eventually you'll get to where you want to be.
Beautiful. I think that capstones your journey in such a profoundly beautiful way, because that's what you did, and you've been successful at it. And yeah, it took a little bit of time, but look where you're at now, and it's sustainable. And I know that you've made the right system changes, engineer speak, I guess you could say, right? The algorithm in your brain has changed. Like, this is sustainable, doable. Like I said, the whole point is to find joy. So congratulations to you, Evan. I just really appreciate you coming on, getting to meet you, having been a client of Forge for so long. I'm so honored. Honestly, it's an honor for me to spend time with you and hear your story. And
thank you. And it's an honor to be on here, and thank you for having me.